Hello, friends. It's Pastor Don here, and I wanted to put together a little bit of a special edition of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. Now, it was my intention when I was together with my colleagues Evan and Jonathan over several days that we were in Wildwood together for our annual conference to film sort of a debrief about what annual conference is, what we do, maybe give you some of the video highlights and overview of it, that sort of thing. But we were taking care of business, and it is just under 48 hours long, so we really didn't have a lot of time to do that. So I thought I'd do it myself, and as I'm talking, you're going to see some of the pictures and some of the videos that I took, and some of the videos that were taken by conference staff and shared to social media. So you kind of get a taste of what annual conference was, and I'm just going to walk through our agenda and tell you a little bit about what we did and what conference is all about. So the annual conference is the annual meeting of all the churches within our conference. Now that is all of the UMCs in New Jersey and several that are in Eastern Pennsylvania and Southern New York. That are all part of our conference. We gather this once a year for this time of fellowship, a time of worship, but also to take care of the business of the conference. One of the things that we dealt with this year that was of particular interest was the fact that we dealt with a constitutional amendments to our Book of Discipline, which we can only do once every 4 years, because the Book of Discipline can only be amended by the General Conference that meets every 4 years. But our General Conference had not met in 8 years because of COVID. So it's something that we hadn't done in quite a while. But anyway, let me just walk through the agenda so you get a taste for this. We arrived on Sunday afternoon. Registration began at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We started as a separated body. So the clergy met for clergy executive session and laity met for laity session. In the clergy executive session is when we approve the work of the Board of Ordained Ministry, who has been interviewing candidates for provisional and full membership as elders and deacons in the conference. It is also a time where we take care of any approving any leaves and things like that. It is a session only for clergy. The laity, to be honest, I couldn't tell you what the laity do. I know that they meet together and there is some things that they discuss, but clergy's taking care of the business of the clergy. So after that, we have dinner, and then in the evening is the service for commissioning and ordination, also recognizing those who are retiring as well. And that's the end of business for the first day. Monday, we start early if you are so inclined. They have communion on the beach early in the morning. And then there is a praise and worship service. The bishop led us in a Bible study after that. And then we jump into kind of the business of the church that we take care of. So we started with the State of the Church report delivered by the bishop. And then we went straight into business and legislation. And we deal with a lot of these are rule changes that are offered by individuals or by boards or agencies in the conference. So we dealt with things like parental leave policy for clergy, arrearage policies if there's churches that aren't able to pay their pastors. Safer GNJ, so this is about sexual abuse. Safe sanctuaries, which is protecting vulnerable adults and youth. We dealt with several church closures, so there were a number of churches that were closed in the conference. We have a service of remembrance before we go on to lunch, and then after lunch we dealt back into more of the business of the church, and particularly we dealt with the constitutional amendments on Monday afternoon. Those amendments dealt with, as I said, changes in our Book of Discipline, in particular We voted on the regionalization of the denominations. So that is, they want to, there's a movement to break up the denomination into regions. So just North America as an example, or Eastern Europe, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. We dealt with, changes in the language of the discipline, things like that. Now, the interesting thing about constitutional amendment votes is that we don't know the results of our conference votes. And depending on what the bishop wants to do, we may not ever know the result of our individual conference votes, because a constitutional amendment is passed by the General Conference. So that was last year. And then it must be passed by 2/3, I believe was the number, 2/3 of all the voting members of all the individual conferences. So as not to influence the votes of later conferences, it's a secret ballot until everyone has voted. And so we won't know the actual numbers until sometime in November. And then it's at the discretion of the bishop whether they will share the individual conference number with us. We also dealt with motions about paying additional moving expenses for clergy appointed out of state. Now, that's, in this situation, we have a number of clergy who live in New Jersey and then were appointed to some of the churches that are part of our conference, either in Pennsylvania or Southern New York. And then they've got to change over their car registrations and their insurance and their licenses, and those expenses aren't covered. So it was a request for the conference to cover those, which, by the way, did pass. There was a resolution for clergy meetings, so the licensed local pastors group and the elders group to have meeting time at annual conference. Bereavement leave for all clergy. We received in the afternoon also on Monday, or was that Tuesday? I think we dealt with it Tuesday morning. Was the financial task force report, which is there has been an ongoing issue since 2021 or so, probably about the last 4 years, of an amount of money going missing from the annual conference, and we're talking in the north of $10 million. And so our new bishop here had a task force. They did a deep dive into the finances, and they presented the preliminary report for that at our annual conference. That it's a challenging issue, to say the least. The important note coming out of that report is that they did not find that there was any malfeasance. They, in essence, what seems to have happened is the conference was paying some unpaid liabilities for individual churches, like they weren't paying all of their health insurance or the property insurance and things like that. And there was a common pool of money that was being used by several different agencies, 2 or 3 different agencies that were not communicating with each other. And so ultimately that money was bled down, and nobody knew until after it was gone. Anyway, I think we dealt with that actually Tuesday morning. So Tuesday morning, again, we had communion on the beach, praise and worship, Bible study. And then they dealt with like I said, this financial report. And we had the reading of the appointments. Now, they read, the individual district superintendents came up to the mic and they read the new appointments, just the new appointments in their individual churches in their districts. So my name wasn't read, because I continue to be appointed here at Asbury and St. John's in the Delaware Bay District, which I am quite happy, and I hope that you folks are all happy to to have me continue here as your pastor for another year. And then we dealt with a lot of the kind of the ongoing regular business was pushed towards the end. So the trustees enabling resolution, nominations report, advanced specials, minimum equitable salary for clergy, and parsonage standards. And then we dealt with a something that's new in the last year or so. We've had a monitoring. So what they were asking is they were asking every person who went to a microphone to speak during annual conference to identify themselves, the church they serve, their status, whether clergy or laity, and then also some of their demographic information, so their age, or at least their age level, and their ethnicity or whatever. Um, so had I gone to a microphone, it would have been Don Stevens, clergy, serving Asbury UMC in Woodstown, St. John's UMC in Harrisonville. I am an adult male, white, something like that. Um, I This was done. This is done. They're monitoring this because they want to make sure that they're hearing from different voices. And from that perspective, I can understand it. Okay, you want a certain, you want everybody to be heard. That's fair. Um, it got a little tedious after a while, and I'm personally ranting now, but it got a little tedious after a while because some people go to the microphone to speak on a lot of things, and having to hear that every single time they went got a little tiring. My suggestion, if anybody from the monitoring group at the annual conference is listening, that people should really only have to do that once. You know who Creed Pogue is. He's Let him do it once, and then he could just Creed Pogue, Millville West Side, and go on. If I were to be going to the mic 8 times in conference, I should really only have to say that once. I think you get it. If you're not sure, check your own records. You're writing it down. Um, and then they had closing worship, communion closing worship, and then there was an optional, this was interesting, an optional joint communion with Eastern Pennsylvania Conference and Greater New Jersey Conference, led by our bishop, who is serving both of those conferences. Now, this is interesting because I believe, I don't know if EPA did this before, Eastern PA did this before, but our conference ended at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, and their conference began at 4 o'clock on Tuesday in the same venue. So they came right in behind us. Now, we have been sharing Bishop back and forth for several years now. And a lot of people have suggested that they're going to merge the conferences. The conferences are going to merge. At some point, they're going to merge. Well, it's been denied at the conference level. No, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that. We're sharing resources. But it certainly does seem like the trajectory that we're on, that at some point down the road, it's just going to be a, Southeast Pennsylvania, Greater New Jersey kind of conference. And this bears out when you see that we closed, I think, was 4 or 5 churches this year, and we've been closing the same number of churches, right in that vicinity, 3 to 6 churches, every year for the past 10 years, as far as I can recall. So I think, at some point, and it's already under consideration that in 2026 we will be going from 6 district superintendents down to 5. So they're going to consolidate districts in the next year or so, which, friends, for where we're at geographically, it's not going to change. We're not going to be changing districts. We're really kind of too far away from any other district to be cut off and put into a different district. But it is, I think the trajectory of the annual conference is that at some point down the line, we will be doing more than sharing resources with Eastern Pennsylvania. But that's no big deal. I don't find that to be a big issue. Anyway, that's kind of just a very bird's eye view flyby of what we do in those almost 2 days of annual conference. Now, interestingly, in a if this were a year before our general conference, so the next general conference will be in 2028. So our annual conference in 2027, we will be electing delegates to go to the general conference. And usually, now, in the past, we would extend our annual conference out to 3 days instead of two, because we were electing those delegates. We found that since they went to electronic voting devices several years ago, that we can get through those ballots a lot quicker. So maybe not next time. Maybe they won't extend it. And to be fair, when we do have to vote on big issues that might be contentious, and we've had hand ballots, and I've actually been on a teller and counting those hand ballots one time. Using electronic devices is a lot better. It's a lot more efficient. Helps things move a lot more quickly. So hopefully we don't have to extend our conference out, because we do expend a fair amount of money just to put on the annual conference. We rent out the entirety of the Wildwood Convention Center, and so it's a big expense, and we provide meals, and we have space for meetings and such. So it is a big expense. So the less time we have to do it, probably the better. But anyway, friends, that's that's kind of an overview of what annual conference is. I'd encourage you, if you have any questions about the business that we took care of or anything you want to discuss about it, talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And until then, friends, although this is still the Finding God in the Dark podcast, you won't see me again next week about annual conference stuff, but you will see me on the regular podcast talking about movies. So take a look at that if you'd like. Take care, friends, and God bless. Bye now.